A millionaire's world tilted when he saw a black waitress let his disabled son try a dance step. Her life was never the same. That evening at the Grandview, a high-end downtown spot, the hush was almost solid. Chatter vanished, silverware paused, and everyone stared at this small opening among the tables. 9-year-old Ethan Miller was visibly shaking. His legs, in their steel braces, faltered as he reached for Sophia Evans, the place's only black waitress. The pianist had just started a quiet song, and this urge to ask for a dance just hit the boy. "Sir, your son needs to behave." Manager Peterson's voice just sliced through. "That's really not on. This isn't a dance hall. Our staff aren't here for children's entertainment." David Miller of Miller Holdings, a very wealthy man, swallowed hard. It was the first time he'd brought Ethan out in public since the accident a couple of years back that had damaged his legs. A mistake he knew he wouldn't make again. "Ethan, sit." The command was quiet, but there was no mistaking the firmness. Sophia just stood there, her eyes moving from the manager to the millionaire, then to the boy, his hand still hopefully out. In her several years there, she'd gotten good at fading into the background, especially with customers like Mr. Miller. "Mr. Peterson, I'm heading out." Her shift was done. Her voice was steady as she took off her apron, laying it on her tray. Then, to everyone's shock, she smiled right at Ethan and took his outstretched hand. "Can't really dance wearing this, can I?" David shot up from his seat. "Just what do you think you're doing?" Sophia met his hard look. "I'm saying yes to a dance, sir." Before another word could be said, Ethan took a shaky step, his foot dragged, a painful sound against the floor, the metal of his braces grating. But Sophia, she didn't rush him, didn't try to steer him. Not at all. She just matched her rhythm to his. "She's so getting fired for this," some lady at a nearby table muttered. David just watched frozen. A flash of a memory hit him. Sarah, his late wife, dancing with Ethan in their own living room. "It's not about being perfect," she'd always said. "It's about connecting." As Sophia moved with Ethan's awkward lead, something changed in his eyes. The fear melted into this intense focus. The shame it turned into this quiet, shy kind of pride. For the first time since it all happened, he wasn't being steered or helped or gently corrected. He was the one leading. "Mr. Miller," the manager's voice broke into his thoughts. "I promise you, this won't ever be repeated. She'll be dealt with properly." David didn't even answer. The whole place just seemed to be holding its breath, waiting to see what he'd do. A man like him, with his kind of influence, could destroy a career with a whisper. Staff stopped their tasks. Other diners looked on, with that kind of nosy interest. Ethan's smile, though, that was the only thing David could hear in his own head. After just 3 steps, Sophia carefully guided the boy back to their table. "Thank you for the invitation," she said, all formal, like he was a grown man. "It was my privilege." When she made a move to box, David's voice stopped her. "Hold on." It sounded different, even to him, almost like someone else's voice. "What's your full name?" "Sophia Evans, sir." David gave a slow nod. "Sophia Evans," he said again, low, like he was burning it into his memory. Then he pulled a business card from his jacket, holding it out to her. "My office. Tomorrow, 9:30 a.m. You could feel the whole room stop breathing. Sophia took the card, her face giving nothing away but her hand. It shook just a tiny bit. "Dad," Ethan piped up as she walked off. "Did you do that?" The question just hung there, heavy, like an accusation. David looked at his son, and for a split second, he didn't just see the little boy Sarah had left him to raise. He saw a whole person, someone whose real needs, whose simple wishes, he'd just completely ignored for 2 long years. Dinner went on in this strained quiet, and nobody caught Sophia's last look as she left. It wasn't fear, not giving up, but this calm strength that was so different from the storm you could see gathering in David Miller's eyes. If this story about finding dignity and making a change is already getting to you, make sure you subscribe to the channel so you can see how one small act of kindness can kick off a quiet revolution that truly changes lives. The entrance to Miller Plaza was all gleaming glass and polished stone, bouncing the morning sun around. Sophia Evans instantly felt she didn't quite belong in her best clothes. A dark gray skirt and cream blouse she'd found on sale. The people rushing past her were in outfits that likely cost more than her whole month's rent. "Sophia Evans, to see Mr. Miller," she told the woman at the front desk. The receptionist gave her a quick, assessing look before picking up the phone. "20th floor, Ms. Hayes will meet you. Inside the elevator, Sophia took a deep, shaky breath, her worn-out handbag clutched tight to her chest. It wasn't really fear she was feeling, more like this steady resolve, the kind you get from having been through worse, a whole lot worse. Ms. Hayes was a woman, maybe in her 40s, with a no-nonsense look about her and perfect posture. Mr. Miller is on a conference call right now. If you'll come with me, please. Through mirrored corridors, Sophia felt the stares. A black woman in the executive suites was unusual, sparking curiosity. He fired you, didn't he? Ms. Hayes asked abruptly when they were alone in a small waiting room. It happens. Big clients make a call. And yeah, people like you are out of a job. People like me? You get what I'm saying. Ms. Hayes fiddled with her glasses. Staff who don't understand their station. Sophia offered a small smile, but there was no humor in it. And where would that be exactly? Before Mrs. Hayes could spit out an answer, her desk phone buzzed. He's ready for you. David Miller's office? It felt like it took up nearly half the entire floor. Looking out the massive windows, the ones that went from floor to ceiling, downtown seemed like some tiny toy set way off in the distance. The man himself was standing there, just looking out at the city like he owned every last bit of it. Mr. Miller? Sophia said, keeping her tone very professional. David turned around, his expression carefully neutral. Practiced. Ms. Evans? Appreciate you coming in. He motioned towards a chair. Please. The quiet that came next felt deliberate, a move Sophia recognized right away. It was that kind of heavy silence, the type meant to make jittery people spill their guts, say too much, dig their own hole. So, what's your background? David finally broke the quiet. I'm sorry? Your education. Schooling. Sophia held his look, steady. I have a bachelor's degree in child development from State University. Started a master's in special education but couldn't finish. Something flickered in David's eyes. Surprise, maybe. And you're working as a waitress. Actually, I juggle 3 jobs. The restaurant, then a bookstore on the weekends, and I tutor when I can find students. David walked over to his desk, picked up a manila folder. I looked into you a bit, Ms. Evans. I wanted to get a handle on the person who, he paused for a second, danced with my son. He opened up the folder. Inside were printouts, photos of some kind of community center. Joyful strides. You started that, 5 years back? Sophia sat up a little straighter. I co-started it with my sister Chloe. It's a dance program for kids with physical challenges. Before I continue my story, if you like this video, please subscribe. It helps me reach my goal of 1,000 subscribers. Thanks for your support. David flipped through a few more papers. And it's about to shut down now because the money's run out. Sophia didn't look surprised at all. Of course, a man like him would dig all that up in under a day. I didn't show up here to ask for your money, Mr. Miller. So why are you here? Because you asked me to come. David let out a quiet laugh, but it had no real happiness in it. Fair point. He got up again, too restless to sit still. I want you to come work for me. Sophia blinked, genuinely caught off guard by that. As a waitress? Here in your home? David's face tightened. As a therapeutic companion for Ethan. Saying his son's name seemed to cost him something. Sophia saw his eyes dart for a second to a picture on his desk. A smiling woman holding a little baby. I've got the top specialists in the entire country, David went on. Physical therapists, brain doctors, psychologists. But what you did last night, he trailed off, like the words themselves were a betrayal. It was just a dance, Mr. Miller. It was the first time I've seen that boy genuinely smile since the accident. The words came out like it pained him to say them. I'm not looking for a dancer for my son. I want someone who can do what you did. Follow his lead, not push him. Sophia really looked at the man standing there. Underneath all that power, that tight control, she glimpsed something others probably missed. A father who was lost and truly desperate. I can offer you 5 times what you're earning right now. Sophia got to her feet. No. David looked stunned, like he wasn't used to hearing that word. I don't take jobs from people who only see my skin color or where I come from before they even consider what I can do, she told him, her voice calm. And I for sure don't work for men who think they can just buy their way out of emotional messes. David's face got red. You're actually saying no to an offer that would fix all your money problems? Because of pride? Because of dignity? Sophia corrected him gently. And because your son deserves better than just someone hired to act like they care. She started for the door, then stopped. Ethan doesn't need another expert poking at him. He needs the room to actually lead his own life. You don't know my son. No, Sophia had to agree. But I do know kids like him. Kids whose physical struggles are nothing next to the invisible walls we tend to build up all around them. She pulled a small card from her purse and put it down on his desk. Joyful Strides, we have classes Mondays and Wednesdays, 4:30 p.m. If you ever want to bring Ethan by, his first class is on the house. As Sophia left, she walked right past Ms. Hayes, who'd clearly been listening in from outside the door. You just said no to David Miller, she whispered, like she couldn't believe it. Are you out of your mind? Sophia just smiled. Maybe, but I'd rather be crazy than be someone's property. The next Wednesday, Sophia was up at the front desk of the community center when Chloe, her sister, and the one who'd started the project with her, came rushing over. There's a sleek black sedan parked out front, she whispered, her hand nervously adjusting her hijab. And you are not gonna believe who's actually in it. Through the community center window, Sophia saw the sleek black sedan. Ethan was in the back, looking out the window, a little anxious. David was still in the driver's seat, his hands gripping the steering wheel, like he was wrestling with himself about something. He's not coming in, Chloe guessed. Guys like that, they don't just walk into places like this one. Sophia just smiled, thinking back to how Ethan's eyes had looked during that short dance. Never count out a determined kid, Chloe. And just as they were watching, the car door creaked open. Ethan climbed out carefully, getting his steel braces sorted. Then, to their total surprise, David got out too. The millionaire looked really out of his element in khakis and a simple sweater. He was trying to dress down, you could tell, but he still just radiated money and privilege. Knew he'd show, Sophia said softly, mostly to herself. Chloe just stared at her. What exactly did you do? Sophia didn't answer, but her eyes had this little sparkle, a secret that even her own sister wasn't completely in on. Back in her small place across town, tucked away under her bed, was an old notebook. It was crammed with notes about kids just like Ethan and men just like David Miller. Years she'd spent watching, researching, and a plan that had all started when she simply said yes to a dance. What David Miller had no idea about, what he couldn't even begin to imagine in his fancy world of glass office buildings and bottomless bank accounts, was that Sophia Evans wasn't just some waitress who danced with his son on a whim. She was a woman who had a purpose, and his whole isolated world, built on privilege, was about to get its biggest shakeup from a simple truth. Some of the most important lessons in life, you can't buy them. You just have to live them. Joyful Strides ran out of an old, converted warehouse space. Posters, all handmade, were up on the walls with sayings like, "Your beat, your way," and "Every step counts." When David and Ethan walked in, a bunch of kids, all using different kinds of walkers or wheelchairs, were freely moving around to a soft, rhythmic beat. Mr. Miller. Sophia walked over, dressed in simple, comfy clothes with the program's logo on them. Welcome. Ethan was just staring at the other children, totally fascinated. A girl in a bright pink wheelchair was doing these perfect spins, while a boy with a prosthetic leg was working out a cool little sequence of steps. It all looks a bit all over the place, David said, clearly not comfortable. There's a system to it, Sophia told him. It's just maybe not one you're used to seeing. She turned to Ethan. Want to go join them? The boy nodded like crazy, but then he looked over at his dad, a little unsure. Go on, David said, his voice tight. I'll be right here. As Sophia led Ethan over to the group, Chloe came up to David and offered him a folding chair. The first day, it's always the toughest, she said quietly. For the parents, I mean, not usually for the kids. This isn't some kind of therapy session, David argued a bit defensively. I've hired the best rehab people in the country. And how's that been going for Ethan? Chloe asked, her voice gentle. The studio door opened just then. An older woman walked in, using a beautifully carved cane for support. She had silver hair done up in neat braids and just had this air of authority about her. Dr. Eleanor Vance, Chloe whispered to David. She's a neuroscientist, specializes in brain plasticity, used to be at a prestigious East Coast university. The woman said hello to a few of the kids before her eyes landed on David. Mr. Miller, you've turned down my research grant proposal 3 times in the past 2 years. Dr. Vance, didn't expect to run into you here. I manage the research program, she explained. We're looking into how non-structured movement approaches can affect neural rewiring in children who have motor difficulties. Research? David frowned. I thought this was just some local dance class. Sophia came back then, leaving Ethan exploring some moves with another little boy. Joyful Strides is actually a pilot program for motor rehabilitation, based on the idea of movement autonomy, she explained. We blend adaptive dance techniques with principles from neuroscience. Then why are you working as a waitress if you're leading a research program? Because we don't have the proper funding, not yet. And because people like you turned us down. 3 times. It finally clicked for him. You were Dr. Vance's assistant on those proposals. Co-author, actually, Dr. Vance corrected him. Sophia has an unfinished master's degree because she had to drop out of school to look after her sister. But her theoretical work? It's absolutely groundbreaking. You knew who I was back at the restaurant, David stated more than asked. From the second you walked in the door, Sophia confirmed. And when Ethan got up to dance, I saw my chance to show you, not just tell you. Was it a setup, the dance? No, not at all. Ethan decided to get up. I just decided to follow his lead. Just then, a group of reporters and photographers came into the studio. David stiffened up immediately. What's all this? Part 2 of the plan, Sophia said, with the slightest hint of a smile. Chloe handed David a freshly printed online article. Groundbreaking movement therapy shows exciting early results. We published our initial findings today, Vance explained, and we let the press know. You used my son for a PR stunt? David's voice was like ice. Sophia led him into a small side room. The walls were covered with photos of dozens of children, and each picture had handwritten notes on their progress next to it. On the far wall, there was a single empty picture frame. What's that for? He asked. Our future. The full-scale rehab center we could build, if we only had the resources. 500 children a year, Mr. Miller, instead of just 50. You planned all of this, David muttered, looking around. The dance, our meeting, getting me here today, when the press was coming. I saw a chance and I took it. When you blew off our meeting 4 months back without even looking at the proposal, I told myself I'd find another way to reach you, David. Sophia, Chloe broke in. It's Ethan. They hurried back into the main room. Ethan was right in the middle with the other kids around him. The music was off. Everyone was watching. He'd actually taken off one of his steel braces and was trying, really trying, to stand on just the one support. Ethan. David started to move, but Sophia put a hand on his arm. Wait, she whispered. Just watch. Ethan took a deep breath, his face all scrunched up in focus. Then, to everyone's absolute amazement, especially his dad's, he managed a whole step with no full support. It was wobbly, small, but it was all his. The kids let out a huge cheer. Cameras started flashing. David's face, usually so controlled, so hard to read, was completely open, and you could see tears shining in his eyes. That's why we started Joyful Strides, Sophia said softly. It's not about perfect steps. It's about those first ones, all on your own. David watched his son, not like a problem he had to manage, but like a whole person finding his own strength. This could have been done without playing me, he finally said, his voice thick. It might have, Sophia replied evenly, if you'd ever returned our calls or read what we sent. 3 times. The reporters were definitely noticing David now. A buzz went through them as Ethan, totally unaware of the drama, kept practicing his new step, his brow furrowed in concentration. David Miller was trapped. He could either storm out, proving he was as cold as everyone thought, or he could lean into this incredible moment his son had just made. Power, money, none of it mattered for this next step. Humility wasn't a word he used much, but seeing Ethan's transformed face, something in him cracked. The reporters closed in. Mr. Miller, any comment on being here at Joyful Strides? Is it true your foundation cut their funding 3 times? David looked at Ethan, still working hard. Then, to Sophia's surprise most of all, he smiled. You know the hardest thing for someone like me? David said, loud enough for the whole room. Admitting when I'm wrong. A shocked hush fell. The Miller Foundation is proud to announce we're fully funding Joyful Strides for the next 5 years, and we'll build a permanent rehab center based on Dr. Vance and Miss Evans's work. Flashes went off like fireworks. Chloe gasped. One condition, David added, and Sophia tensed. Ms. Evans keeps full control over the program. No corporate meddling. 3 months later, bulldozers were on site for the new Joyful Strides Center. It wasn't the fanciest project the Miller Foundation had backed, but it was the most groundbreaking, with kids and families helping design every part of it. Sophia was there a lot, and so was Ethan, often with friends. And, to the staff's ongoing surprise, David Miller would show up too, just watching. Never pictured you at board meetings, Sophia remarked one afternoon over blueprints. Never thought I'd be learning about neuroplasticity at my age, David grumbled, rubbing his eyes. A science paper covered in sticky notes lay before him. But well, here we are. Sophia gave him a curious look. Is this just for show or do you actually care? Ethan asked to have his second brace taken off last week. I know, he told me. His old therapist said that was impossible for at least 2 more years. Sophia smiled. But you let her go, remember? Because you said she was wrong. And she was. Sophia pointed to a photo of Ethan balancing with just one crutch. He's way ahead of any traditional timeline. Why didn't you ever accept my apology? David asked out of the blue. Because you never actually apologized. Sophia stated simply. You moved money, changed rules, funded us. That's making things right. It's not saying sorry. David nodded slowly. Fair enough. 6 months later, at the opening ceremony, the difference from that night at the Grand View was staggering. The huge new adaptive gym was buzzing with children, all moving in their own ways. In the center, Ethan, now with only a light support on his left leg, was leading a little routine with 3 other kids. His moves were still a bit limited, but he moved with a sureness no doctor ever thought he'd have. David watched them from the side, not stepping in, just watching. He doesn't need you to hold his hand anymore, does he? Sophia said, coming up beside him. No, David agreed, a small smile playing on his lips. But he still needs me to be here for him. That's a big difference. David turned fully to her. Thank you, he said, his voice quiet but sincere. For what exactly? For showing me how to follow. A reporter edged closer. Mr. Miller, seeing your son's progress, what's that like? David looked over at Ethan, who was now patiently helping a younger girl find her footing. Proud, not just of what he's overcome, but what he's now helping others do. And the biggest lesson for you in all this? David Miller, once known mostly for his financial empire, looked straight at the camera. That real leaders aren't the ones who drag people down their path. They're the ones brave enough to follow when someone else points out a better way. A year on, Joyful Strides had programs in 3 more cities. Sophia won a major award for her innovative pediatric rehab work, and hospitals around the country started using her methods. Ethan, needing only a light cane on really tough days, was in regular school and had become a young ambassador for the program, encouraging other kids. And David? He learned the toughest, best lesson. Real power isn't about controlling everything. It's knowing when to step back and let others lead. In a world where the powerful seldom change and the overlooked often stay in the shadows, the story of David, Sophia, and Ethan shows us that real change happens when we break down the invisible walls between us. When a millionaire learns a vital lesson from a waitress. When a father truly follows his son's lead. If this story about how one simple act of dignity could change so many lives touched you, please think about subscribing to our channel.